All right. Now, before we get started, um, we are in the midst of a very trying time for everyone. We found ourselves in the midst of a pandemic that started all of this to begin with, the COVID-19 pandemic. Then we found ourselves in a financial crisis. Then we found ourselves in an employment crisis with all the business having to shutter, everyone having to stay at home, and a lot of jobs, a lot of people were laid off. And I'm sure it's affected every single one of us in one manner or another. And now to add on top of that, we find ourselves in a societal crisis with what's happened in Minnesota. Could be a trying time for all of us. Let's remember that we've all been blessed because we've been given an opportunity as a community, as a group, and as a family to be able to reach out to one another and converse with one another and help each other during these trying times, to keep each other positive, to support each other. Let's remember that we've been blessed with this opportunity. And believe it or not, we can serve as an example to the society as a whole of what's possible. If you look across the attendees of our meetings every Wednesday, it is a wide range of different people, backgrounds, locations, and we're all here for one purpose, and that is to help and support one another and to continue to learn with one another. So we have this opportunity to be the example that everyone else can follow. And believe it or not, we can spread this approach to everyone that we have a conversation with, whether it's within the family, whether it's someone you run into somewhere else outside of family. We are the living example of what's possible. And as I always do, and seriously, I really thank every single one of you for being here every week and participating and sharing your knowledge and information and being positive and supporting one another. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Now, today's topic is we're going to provide a wide range and a tremendous amount of information to you today on a topic that may seem a little simple, but believe it or not, there's more to go into it than we normally realize. And we know that the topic for this week is self-talk, processing plays. And every single one of us has heard that term at one form or another of how important your self-talk is. But I believe the one thing that hasn't been discussed in detail enough is exactly what does that internal dialogue consist of? How do you perform your internal dialogue during plays? Your internal dialogue will determine and help you identify what it is that you're looking at, what you're focused on, and help you identify the plays as they're developing. And so today we're going to provide several different examples and the full gamut of what that really entails. And as usual, if you have observations, comments, feel free to share them. You can ask your questions, make your observations. If you have questions, you can put them in the chat section, and I promise you we'll do our best to get to them, okay? So we have three presenters today. I will present first. My brother Jason will go second, and of course Amy, last but definitely not least, will present her topic at the very end, okay? So without any further ado, we're gonna roll right into the clips, and I will start with the first clip I'm gonna show. And as usual, we'll play the clip through full speed the first time, maybe two times. And then I will walk us back and we'll slow it down and we'll go step by step and we will review exactly how I process this play, exactly what my internal dialogue is, so that we can gain an understanding of what's entailed in that. I really think that it's important when we're on the floor that we're not just looking and then reacting to what we see that have a tendency to put us behind the play. Let's identify the players on the floor in your primary, leaving your primary, entering your primary, in your secondary, because by identifying each player, it puts us mentally in the right part of the rule book to adjudicate, engage, contact when it happens, when it occurs. Okay, so now let me see if I can get this done fluidly. All right. Here's the first clip. And like I said, we're going to play the first clip full speed all the way through. Then I'll come back and walk through it again. And if anyone has any questions at any time, please ask. All right. So now let me attempt to walk you through exactly what was going through my mind, how I was processing this play as it developed. And here's the key. If you are processing all of your plays accurately, consistently, every possession, there is no reason as an official that we should ever check out of a game. We have entirely too much to do with every possession to ever lose, to disengage from the game that we're involved in. And it also keeps us focused on what's in front of us. And we are aware of the score, but the score actually becomes secondary because we're working possession by possession. Okay, to start out with, we're inbounding on the sideline in the backcourt, correct? And here's the thing. You will notice that my partner, who's in C, is in a held position toward the division line. And there's a reason for that. I noticed that before the inbounds, and that's because this is the second period, by the way. The player for the home team that I'm circling here is their best defender. And she has a tendency to jump the BHD immediately as she hits the division line. And that's been happening the whole game, and that's something we've discussed. So we're aware of that, so we have to be prepared for that if it happens, depending on what direction the point guard moves in. Okay, so as I present the ball to the thrower in, this is non-competitive. So keep a wide view of the court. I notice my partner's position, and we're waiting for the play to dictate our next action. Now, as the ball is inbounded, chop the clock, and the first thing we do is check the clock. Make sure the game clock, shot clock starts. That's the first thing. Now, since there's no pressure on the BHC in the backcourt, now we can scan down the floor for our next action area, our next competitive matchup. We have the latitude to do that because there is no pressure in the backcourt. As we're crossing the division line, still no pressure. Now, this allows me to maintain a wide angle view of the court, being able to pick up all the players. Now, I'm telling myself, post player, cutter, non-competitive, post player, about to become another second post player above the free throw line. There's another element that I'm going to go back and play at the end of this clip that factors into how we process this play also, and it's an audible cue that we need to learn to pick up. The BHD changed directions, changed trajectory. This is the second period. They've already run this play probably 3 or 4 times in this game already. So we are able to anticipate what the offensive team is about to do. So now we have post player, still not competitive, wide view, looking through the court, non-competitive matchup, competitive matchup with this post player. Cutters, identify your cutters. Even though they're not in your primary, we've seen this play before. We can anticipate what's about to occur. This is still not competitive, so I'm identifying my post players. This cutter changed trajectory. Why? Because we've seen this play. Our BHD stops. Her momentum is stopping. This player is going to cut through these two post players, and we're looking for the elevator screen. We've already seen it. Earlier in the game, we've had contact on that screen. So now we can anticipate it. So now, post players, and I've also identified them as potential screeners. This, who's in my secondary, is approaching my primary. Once again, this isn't competitive. So then, yes, I can widen my view and pick up the action of the players who are on the edge of my primary and in my secondary entering my primary. She's a cutter. Potential screeners. Once she clears the screen, I tell myself she's clean. No contact, she's clean. Legal play. The defender is still on the cutter. The BHD is anticipating her to be free, so that's where she wants to go with the ball. They're still in screening action. This is not competitive. So here's my focus right here. As the pass is made, the defender closes out. She's within 6 feet. Now we have to use our entire vision because we have a closely guarded matchup with the ball, which requires the count. We also now have a new cutter, identify her as a cutter. Then we have screener, screener. This is the most competitive screen currently on this play. So we have to have the ability to officiate multiple matchups in our primary, along with taking the cutter through our primary into our secondary. She's a cutter. Identify the screener. This becomes uncompetitive, which gives us the latitude to broaden our vision again. Screener, cutter, cutter, potential screener going into our secondary. When the pass is being made, this contact right here occurs. This is when our antenna should go up because of this contact right here. Not saying it's illegal, but we are aware. Here's the other phase. Once this pass is made into C's primary, which is my secondary, as soon as my partner picks it up, I immediately turn my head immediately to my primary to pick up cutting action and screening action immediately. Do not. If that pass is made, screener, cutter, screener. Once again, identifying players in your primary. Cutter, screener, cutter. Boom. Cutter becoming a potential screener. We still have a screener and a post player. She's a cutter. Switch, the defender switch. Now she becomes a screener. And this is all part of our internal dialogue. Boom. Screener, screener, cutter. And because we've identified these players for what they are, it places our mind in the right part of the rule book mentally, so that when contact occurs, it helps us to gauge the contact cleanly more effectively. Contact, decision. Illegal screen. Here's a question for the group. What type of screen was it?
Wayne, are those hammer screens?
Say that again.
Was that a hammer screen? Is that what they call it?
Good question. A terminology that doesn't exist at this level, but does exist at a higher level. Would that be considered a hammer screen? It's off the ball, correct? And I'm not sure if our members who currently work at that level are allowed to answer that or not. So let's use terminology that does exist at the level that we're currently working at, that we're displaying. What type of screen would that be by rule? We have two choices.
Blind.
Okay, blind screen. What else?
Illegal.
Yes, definitely illegal. We have either a screen within the visual field or we have a blind screen, correct?
Right.
Outside the visual field.
That's right, outside the visual field. Was this screen within visual field or outside?
Within.
Within.
Yeah, within.
Within the visual field, correct? So the screener is required to stop just short of contact and cannot make contact. Was this screen legal or illegal?
Illegal.
Correct. So if we place ourselves, we identify the players on the court, identify her as a screener. She's already caught our attention early in the play because of contact made with a defender who was cutting behind her. We're already aware of her. She likes to make contact. She's a screener. If we identify her as such, that puts us in the right part of the rule book. So when contact occurs, it makes the play simple. Visual screen, made contact, illegal. Whereas if we're not processing our plays accordingly, we're not identifying players, we're waiting for contact to occur, then we're trying to decide what type of contact is it. Then we're trying to decide, was it legal or illegal? We have to quickly flip through the rule book in our mind, find it, determine, and then make a decision, which creates the risk of being either behind on the play or misinterpreting the play because we misgauge the contact based on by rule.
I have a quick question on that.
Yes, sir. What's the question?
What if, like right there, like say for instance, she wasn't trying to set this screen, and she, because players make contact accidental all the time. So what if there was just accidental contact? Would you still penalize that player or just let that play on?
It depends. If we identify as a screener, then yes. If we have players moving on the floor and they just happen to make contact, not all contact is illegal. But if we identify her as a screener, and that is the role she's in, and that's what she is doing, and then this contact occurs outside the parameters of a legal screen, then it becomes illegal.
Wayne, this is Tony. Can I speak up?
Yes, sir.
I would like to share two things. This is good information. I think one key word that has to be utilized is the word intent in screens. It covers the plays that you could have contact. In this case, there was intent to have a screen.
Correct.
So if there's contact, whether it's moving, whether it's non-moving, whether it's illegal, as far as the way I set up and legs out, okay, so it's intent. The second thing I would like to share with you, and this is what someone told me many years ago, is you cannot occupy two thoughts on your mind at the same time.
Correct.
Otherwise, you won't be able to do justice to either one of them. I think the one thing that I think is important for every official is mechanically, you should be able to move mechanically without thinking about it. And that takes a lot of spaced repetitions in order for you to process plays on the floor automatically. Because I think there's officials more worried sometimes about where they're at and where they're not at, which in a split second, they would lose a play.
Yep.
So mechanically, if you're working with new officials at camps and things, or high school, they should know that they should be able to move automatically so that when you're talking about the plays you're talking about, then they can absolutely get it right.
Correct.
But if they're worrying about where they're at versus, and then think about the play, then they got problems. So it's better, and this is where a lot of coordinators in the country and I talk about it, it is better to get the play right. You can always adjust the mechanics later. Just feedback.
Does anybody have any other feedback as far as like the legality of the screen? Anybody?
Like if she's too wide in her stance, or
See, because when I initially saw this screen, there for me there just wasn't much there. But I can see what you're saying, Wayne, with the visual field. I'm just not sure if that contact was enough to delay the defender from getting through the screen. These are just like my thoughts that I was kind of thinking. I just wanted to get anyone else's feedback on it.
Blanca, could we run it one more time, please? Is that possible?
Yeah. Wayne, can you run it? Can you guys see it? I can't see it.
I think we lost Wayne.
Oh, here we go. Okay.
Yeah, at one point it said he left the group.
Oh,
Hopefully I'm back now.
okay, there he is. Okay.
Right.
Hey, Wayne, do you mind running that play back, please, from the beginning?
Not a problem. Hold on 1 second. All right, here we go. Let's run this play back from the very beginning. All right, and we're going to run it back full speed. How does that sound?
Perfect.
Hey Wayne,
Yes, sir.
did part of your decision have to do with like the chicken wing that she gave her before the illegal screen happened?
That chicken wing that you're talking about on the defender who tried to cut behind her,
Yep.
it raised my antenna as it should. So it captured my attention. Not to say that it was illegal, but now I'm aware of her. Now, that does not mean it's an influence on the contact that happens after that, but at least I am aware so that the next contact doesn't catch me by surprise. Now, there's another element when it comes to processing of plays that we also have to take into consideration. Like I said, this is the second period, correct? The play they're about to run, they've run 2 or 3 times previously. We also have audible cues when we're on the floor. I just raised the volume so that we can actually hear the volume and hear the play being called out. Coach has called out the play. We've seen this play 3 times. He's called it out every time. So when we hear that audible cue, that gives us the ability to anticipate what the offensive team is about to run. So it helps us to prepare. Once again, that's part of processing this play. The audible cues puts us in the right mind frame.
Hey, Wayne, real quick. So if you just leave it paused there and we just look at our positioning, I think you're in a good position here. But if we look at our center slot official, you see how when she's moving, she's completely, she or he, I can't really tell, turning his or her shoulders. And I would just recommend, I know what's helped me is just to make sure that we try to stay, as we move, we stay open to the players, right?
Correct.
Because as soon as you turn your shoulders, then now you're having to either look back and it's just harder for you to get a good view. So I would just suggest people to make sure to keep your shoulders open to the players.
Correct. I agree.
Hey, Wayne and Blanca, may I interject for a second?
Of
Yeah.
course.
I didn't want to interrupt you there, but I think it's important that the group doesn't miss, and I don't know, Wayne, if you were on, I think it was Tony that spoke a few moments ago. And Wayne, were you still on the call at that point?
Did Tony speak again a second
No.
time?
No.
He spoke about moving our thoughts to a subconscious level.
Yes.
And the reason I just want to put an explanation point on that, because I think that might be the biggest takeaway from this play, because we can debate plays for all time. I mean, whether a screen's illegal or not illegal, but if you can grasp what Tony just said in regard to utilizing your video and being able to take a conscious thought and move it to a subconscious level, and that's really what separates great officials in officiating, because the fundamentals of the mechanics and the coverage become that subconscious level thought. And I know
Correct.
one of your topics here is self-talk, and really the goal in self-talk should be to use simple buzzwords, so that now, to Tony's point, I have the fundamentals down subconsciously. So now all I have to do is, when I see this screen coming, I just need to say to myself, am I on ball or off ball?
Mm-hmm.
And is the act legal or is it illegal? And I
Correct.
think the more simplified we can get to that point in self-talk, I think it just allows us to be more comfortable, more authentic and relaxed on the floor, and better process and make better decisions. You know, one of the things we talked about in the last few weeks are verbal prompts. And, you know, I know you talked about before you threw the ball in, you know, to check the clocks. You know, one of the verbal prompts that we like to say is, before the ball's inbounded or as you're coming up the backcourt, you know, clocks, fouls, players, just simple buzzwords. So just, I think that was excellent what Tony said. And if you get nothing else out of this call, that alone was worth all its time. So I thank Tony for bringing that up, and I just wanted to put an explanation point on that.
And Al, I think that's an excellent point. It's a great point. And you're right, Tony's right on point. We have to, what we're discussing right now, it has to become second nature. We have to be able to conduct these movements, these exercises, these thoughts without having to think about it. How does that happen? How do we go from conscious to subconscious? It comes with repetition. It comes with practice. You actually have to practice this until it becomes second nature. You have to have an understanding of your rules, your officiating principles, where you don't have to remind yourself or think about them to know them. When you study them and they become to the point where they are second nature, like breathing, and you see them, you know it when you see it, without having to go back and reprocess and try to think about what it is. So you both made excellent points. What else? What other questions do we have or observations on this process right here?
I would say another thing that I noticed is also, if you run it back just a little bit, is leads positioning. I think that we're better off being wide here, because again, the wider we are, the more that we can see. And especially when we have screening action, we want to make sure that we have our eyes there. So let's just look at leads positioning.
Correct.
When this happens. Okay, so our guide is to make sure that we're in line with the ball. So here, okay, he starts to go. Go ahead, Wayne, play it a little more. Okay, and you can't really tell what he's looking at, but I would just say, just try to stay wide at lead. And obviously he needs to be looking right up the paint here at the screening action as well. So if Wayne doesn't get this, he needs to be able to assist on it.
Correct. That is correct. And B, I agree with you, is that as this play starts, we should be in wide position and lead. And also recognize that we've lost shoulder discipline, because now we're almost parallel to the end line. So let's stay disciplined. Let's position adjust wide. So then when the movement is necessary, we're in the correct position. As this play develops, becomes a close down with the potential to rotate. But if you look at the location of the players, the movement of the players. And like I said, they've run this play 3 times. We know they're coming back strong side. So that's a big part of play calling, is understanding what they're running. And that gives us the opportunity, especially once you see this player cutting, the screener setting up, we're in position to help with the backside of the screen if necessary. That pass is coming. We can position just wide if necessary. What else we got, people?
Hey, Wayne,
Yes.
on the initial elevator cut, were you able to see both the screeners in your visual peripheral?
Correct. What does C have in their primary? C has nothing in their primary. So their next action area would be the free throw line where the screen is occurring. So yes, we would both pick up both sides of this screen. Especially since this was part of our conversation in first period at the first media timeout, because we had contact on this screen the first time it occurred. The defensive team, the home team, made an adjustment. And they made an adjustment to stay on the hip of that cutter to get through the screen. But previous to this, they got caught on the other side of that elevator screen, and we had to judge the contact. Does that answer your question, Todd?
Somewhat. I thought initially you said you were watching both screeners. I was just wondering if you could see them or if you were straight lined at all.
Let's take it back a beat. Because I have this side of the screen, C would have the back side of the screen if contact occurs. As that cut is coming through the screen, this is not competitive, so I look through the play for any potential contact with the defenders coming through the screen. I'd have this side of the screen, C would have the back side of the screen. Good question. What else? The elements that we're discussing, these are things that we all can practice continually. It doesn't matter how long you've been working, it doesn't matter what level you work. These are the things that have to become second nature, but they only get there if you practice them, mentally practice, so that you can push them down into your subconscious so they happen automatically without having to remind yourself. All right,
Wayne,
Jason.
Wayne, real quick,
Yes.
Al put on the chat, when you were coming up the floor, were you watching the defender? Were you watching the ball? And if so, why?
Great question. First was clock, checking to see when she crosses the division line, because we all know we don't want to cross the division line before the BHD. We want to stay in proper position. And now my vision is wide. Here's the key. And this is something we all have to develop. We have to develop the ability to officiate everything in our vision. Here's the visual field. The defenders here, that's not competitive. We still have to have the ability to pick up the movement of these players without having to turn our head and focus on them. It keeps everybody within our visual field.
And we had another good question on the chat. For those of you that don't know what BHD means, that's just an abbreviation for ball handler dribbler.
Yes, good question. Does everyone understand officiating everything in your visual field? All right, Jason, brother, are you ready to roll into your clips?
Let's do it. Hey, Wayne, before you go off, could I ask one quick question?
Of course.
And that's the inbound of the ball.
Yes.
I was just watching as we had a call in the lane, obviously, and but I know the lead's running up like he's going to take it off onto the side, and I was just curious about that, where you guys put it in. They threw the ball opposite to the C. The lead's running up as if he was going to come to the side. I know you're pointing out to the baseline, but I was just kind of curious how that played out.
That's an excellent question, because I'm going to tell you what happened. He's running up asking for the ball. They bounce the ball to the C. Yes, I indicate inline throw-in, even verbalized it. My partner came up, initially he's asking for the ball. He chased the ball, and he went to the sideline to inbound it.
Yeah.
Instead of coming back and inbounding at the correct spot.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was wondering, because when you watch his I don't know, whoever that is, when you watch him, it looks like their eyes are on the ball. And when
Yes.
when you did the offensive, it was as if, oh, there's an offensive out there on the ball. And as if you were reaching over in front of C. And that's probably why he ran over there. But that's what I was thinking. Okay. Thanks.
Yes, correct. Good question. Excellent question.
Ready, Wayne?
I'm ready, brother. And you want full volume, correct?
Yeah, just hold the video for a second, though. I just want to talk about, kind of set this up and talk about, how I got to this play and this sequence to teach on self-talk. Y'all covered it already, the very start of what I was going to say. And there's basically, in my mind, there's like four or five tiers of learning subconscious to conscious when it comes to officiating. When you're starting out, you're consciously thinking about where do I stand, my positioning, what angle do I stand at? If I'm at center, free throw line extended every single time. If I'm at trail, start out at the 28-foot mark, 45-degree angle. If I'm at lead, am I wide? Am I closed? Am I pinched? All those things are immediately on your mind when you're a first, second, third year official, because that is the development of the solid foundation that you're going to create. Once you get to the point where you don't have to think about your positioning, you just go there, and you know exactly where you're supposed to be looking. Then you can move into the next level, in my mind, of taking it from the conscious to the subconscious, and that's play calling. Play calling takes a lot of work. It's a lot of gray, but it takes a lot of video work, a lot of feedback from your colleagues, a lot of feedback from your bosses. But if the number one thing that we do out there is get the plays right, and but sometimes we got to know when we need to get them wrong for the right reasons to navigate ourselves through that situation. So that's like the second level. After you learn where we're supposed to stand, where we're supposed to look, now I feel good about my play calling. I know what I'm knowing how to deem marginal versus illegal contact, let plays start, develop, and finish. I've seen the reps. Then I can move on to thinking about other things that can empower me to be a really, really good, solid official, and eventually a crew chief at every level I work. And that's handling the personalities. Now at my level, there's two personalities that we basically handle every night, and that's the head coaches. At the NBA level, they handle the players, and the coaches are in the off scenes or whatever. So where I have to start thinking about is, how am I going to handle each personality on that sideline every night, and how am I going to adapt to it? course, I'm going to have a guideline and a game plan going in, but then again, I have to be willing to adapt. And, you know, a lot of that comes with a ton of huge mistakes, along the way, a lot of school of hard knocks. And then I think maybe the last thing that I think about after how to manage the personalities is just the overall scheme. You know, I always say that we're actors in a play. Every game we watch is a play, and everything has to fit. The number one onus that we have with the black and white shirt on is to be professional at all times. So when you think about conflict resolution, professionalism is at the highest point. You always have to be professional because they're always going to come back. It's when conflict resolution comes into play during a game, and they're going to call your supervisor. A supervisor cannot defend your lack of professionalism. But if you do go out there and show professionalism, it will most likely be the direct opposite of what the coach has done. And there'll be able to be a clear line of what's wrong and what's right and how everything should have been adjudicated. So I say all that to say this. I had to figure out, you know, when I was 20 years old, I looked 10. And my on-court persona was I was a kid. But I had a lot of confidence. Excuse me, but I was just an old farm boy from Cuba, Kentucky, and I was full of piss and vinegar. And I had to figure out a way to back that down a little bit. The feedback when I was a young referee that I would get from my supervisors were that, you know, the coaches think you're cocky. They think you're arrogant out there. And the whole time, the reason why they were thinking that is because my answer to conflict resolution at that time was just a technical foul. And I didn't have the experience to navigate myself through it with words and dialogue. I would just assess technical fouls and move on. And probably the optics of all of that, all those times were absolutely terrible. And in 2000, that's one thing. In 2020, where every single night we go out there, no matter what level you're working, 6th grade basketball, junior high basketball, all the way up to the top, whatever, it could end up on SportsCenter. So, you know, the things that we did 20 years ago don't work now. We have to be more professional as officials because everything is on video. So through the years, through experience, I had to figure out, you know, my internal persona told me that, hey, I'm a pretty good guy. I'm a good person. I mean, but it doesn't come across on the floor. So at some point in time, it clicked that, you know, as a matter of fact, it was, you know, Curtis Shaw. He said, Jason, he said, when you figure out how to talk to the coaches, then this stuff will get a lot easier for you. And through time, through experience, through maturity, the biggest deal of it, that's when things did start to get easier because I could talk to coaches. And along the way, I was developing more credibility. So my mental thought would always be, as I got into the SEC and stuff, is just have a low profile, but have high impact. And I try to blend in on the court when everything's running smooth, but when I have to jump out, I need to have a high impact, but with professionalism at all times. And then, you know, we have to realize that we are imperfect perfectionists in an imperfect business, and we're highly sensitive people. And we have to control our emotions, but we have to have 1000% self-awareness of who we are and what we are putting out on the floor. When somebody looks through that camera lens and they flip the TV on, what are they seeing? Are they seeing an official that is not ready for the moment, or are they seeing an official who's composed, going to make mistakes? Everybody's going to make mistakes, but it's how do you react to those mistakes? That's a big part of it as well. So any questions to this point? I'll move into the teaching session here. So, there one. So, in my like I said, I had tons of technical fouls early on in my career. But in my 5 years in the SEC, in the first 4, I did not have any technical fouls on any head coaches. And, I don't know if that's luck, that's experience, that's credibility. But the whole time all that's happening, I knew in the back of my head that I had really never been tested on a bigger stage for me with conflict resolution. So I always had to prepare myself for that. So to me, self-talk begins really when you get the assignment.
Right.
When you get the assignment, you don't want to borrow trouble. Anxiety lives in the future. Those games are coming up, but they're not today. But like Ed says, knowledge is power. So if you know you have an assignment coming up 3 weeks from now that could potentially be, potentially has some hair on it, you need to keep your ears to the ground about what's happening in the games leading up to your game. As coach get thrown out, players hurt, something, atypical happens. You need to know all that just to have it in your toolbox, because it could very, very much help you navigate through some tough times and to know what's coming and kind of give yourself a guideline. So, for this particular game, this was in late February, SEC conference game. Both teams are struggling. I started doing my homework, a couple of days before the game. I knew that Ole Miss had lost their last 2 road games, one to a team they shouldn't have lost to. I knew that Alabama had got off to a good start in league play, but they had lost 5 of the last 7. Both these teams are fighting hard not to play on Wednesday night in the SEC tournament, and maybe Alabama's still fighting for a possible at-large bid in the NCAA tournament. So you've got that stuff in it, but then the personal components to it. When I talk about dealing with personalities on the sideline, I've got one coach at one end that I've officiated for probably 15 years, and no doubt have given him more technical fouls than any other coach that I've worked for in my career. But I think a lot of people could say this about this guy. And the other guy on the other end is a rookie coach in the league. He only had 1 technical foul, he didn't have any technical fouls coming into the league, obviously. But the first week I had him, I had to assess him a technical foul. And that was the first technical foul that I given to a head coach in my 5 years in the league. So you got those components coming in. So I know at some point in time, conflict resolution is probably going to come into play, because both these teams want to win this game really bad. You've got 2 highly competitive coaches over there who sometimes let their emotions, the competitive emotions, come out on the floor onto us. So you got all that going into this. And sure enough, this first play here, we're first half, just to show you how wound up these coaches are. This is an illegal screen that we call for Ole Miss. And watch the Ole Miss coach in the blue jacket.
Wayne, it kind of jumped. Do you mind running that back? Okay.
Sure, not a problem.
Do you have the audio turned up, Wayne? Okay. So we just had an illegal screen against white at the other end. We come back down. We have an illegal screen against red. Everything should be fine, but the coach is very worked up about a lot of different things that we had done prior to that. And, you know, he comes out and he's chasing, he's yelling, and it's time to, if we permit, we promote, right? And this is in the first half. So we want to go ahead and nip this in the bud. And, you know, we give a technical foul on Kermit. Now, if you could hear the audio, you can't see the video. But if you hear the audio, you can hear the whistle beep. It goes beep, beep, beep. I can't see it. That's me assessing a technical foul, but I know by the way that I went beep, beep, beep that my professionalism was lowered a little bit because, you know, I can tell that I was worked up. So, you know, learning from that moment right there, what I want to say to myself is, hey, the next time you give a technical foul, especially if it's an obvious one, you know, one beep is fine. You go beep, 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 that's equivalent to you bowing up and saying, I've got this, not you. And, you know, that's crossing the line of bad professionalism. So we get the first technical foul out of the way. And now my self-talk, you know, after the first technical foul is Coach Oates at the other end, Alabama coach. He's now got a tighter leash, okay? But he should be pretty happy because we've just assessed a technical foul. He's probably paranoid, being on the road for the first time at Ole Miss. He should be pretty satisfied that we've handled the home coach. The second thing I have to tell myself is now Coach Davis has a longer leash. You know, he's gotten his first technical foul. Here we are at the end of conference season. If he's going to get a second, if he's got to go, he's got to go. But it's got to call itself, 1,000%. And, you know, and if at all possible, if he does have to go, I hope it's not me that has to do it, but that it's somebody else, that it's my partner. So that was my self-talk after the first technical foul. One thing that looking back on this, and you'll see where this really becomes an issue here in a second. I was very comfortable in this moment, and I felt like I was ready for the moment. But I did not tell myself stay focused on play calling and get back to the basics. I didn't tell myself to do that. And that eventually led to a problem. So we go into halftime. We talk about our dynamics. We cover, you know, we kind of have a game plan and a guideline for the second half. And then we have this play right here. Go ahead, Wayne. Okay. Let's start. You can go ahead and go back to the beginning of it, Wayne.
Yep.
We'll talk about the self-talk. Yeah, right there. Just stop right there. We'll talk about the self-talk that I had immediately after this rebounding action and after the reaction from Coach Oates. And then we'll break down the play real quick and talk about, you know, a simple fix that could have avoided this whole situation. So we have what Coach Oates thinks is a rebound foul after this missed shot. And remember, he's on a short leash, and I am right there beside him. So time and distance has to be in my head as far as the optics. So we have the missed rebound. Go ahead and play, Wayne. Missed shot, rather. And now we've got a fast break. As I start to lead off, stop. As I start to lead off, I can feel him chasing me. Okay? But I have, and I have to know at that point whether he has bought himself a technical foul or not, because, and somebody from the group chime in for me here. If we have a situation like this, and I had decided immediately after Coach Oates' reaction that he had just bought himself a technical foul, but White now has the ball on a fast break, what does the manual say to do?
Wait till the play is completed.
What was that?
What does the manual say in a situation like this where we have a potential coach who's going to be assessed a technical foul, but we have the opposing team in a fast break situation?
Wait till the play is completed.
Exactly right. Wait till the play is completed, and then after the play is completed, you assess him a technical foul. In this particular situation, I had not made the decision yet that Coach Oates was going to be assessed a technical foul because he slowed me up a little bit. I turned around and he stopped coming after me. But my mental thought is, after this made basket, I'm going to come down to the other end. And if he is still on whatever he is still on, then at that point in time, we're going to balance things out, and he's going to be assessed a technical foul too. So I had time to mentally prepare to come down and be right in front of him to do it. And when I did it, I wanted to make sure that, number one, that I wasn't right in his face, and number two, that I didn't point at him. So go ahead and play it, Wayne. No problem. He's pissed. No big deal. But let's talk about, and he obviously deserved a technical foul, but he was exactly right in what he was complaining about. Because let's break down real quick. I don't want to get caught up in this too much. But go back to the very top, Wayne, very beginning of the play, and talk about position. Oh, right there. Stop. Okay. We're in just a standard position, but Trail is, his body language says that he is a little bit disengaged. He is very, like Al says, Al talks about being staggered. Staggered keeps you engaged. Trail is standing flat-footed, and you're going to see in a second how flat-footed he continually stays. So go ahead and run it. Stop right there. Right before this shot was taken, you would be able to see Trail's eyes looking back at this three-point action. He has no reason to look back to the right to watch this shot. And if he does, he better get the rebounding really, really, really quick. But his body is leaning out toward the top of the key. His eyes are heading that way as well. Okay? It's very important. Center is on ball here. Center has this play from start to finish. It's very important for Trail to know where he can really help out. And we don't need Trail's help right there, especially since he's got players in between him looking through him. We've got a shot taken. My self-talk is going to say rebounding. So now, if we go to rebounding, Red clearly gets pushed to the baseline. And Wayne, if you have that end zone look I've had.
Yes.
Just stop it from the top.
Yep, it's coming up right after this.
Oh, right here. All right, stop it right there. All right. We can see that we have to understand when we talk about rebounding and just plays in general, we have to understand, what angle we're looking at. Center and lead have the same look. It's just the opposite angle. I can see red at center, Lee can see white, but we can't see lateral movement right there. Trail, he's got the 45. He's looking right through it. And maybe if he takes a staggered step down with a little more engaged into the play, that he will go ahead and grab this and see it and call it. Because if we, and great point out, Trail has to protect Lee's backside. If Trail gets this play, we probably don't have the conflict resolution that we have to deal with after this. But because we missed this play, we have to. No problem. That happens every game. But I just wanted to point out where, when we have situations like this, we always have to ask ourselves why. And this is the why. Trail did not come down, get a little bit better angle, and fire when he saw the push.
Right.
So now that we have the technical fouls on both head coaches, my self-talk is actually pretty good. I said to myself, now we're in balance. And I also said to myself, if there's any more technical fouls, again, make sure they call themselves. And here's the big takeaway. I'm comfortable in this moment. I feel like that I was ready for this moment. I didn't say to myself, focus on play calling. This is going to be even though it's an 11-point game, it's late in the season, this is still going to be a highly competitive next 15 minutes. And you need to make sure that you don't have any BS in the game. So I let my mental lapse go down. And here's what happened. Go ahead and play the play. Okay. Lots of stuff to deal with here. Number one, it was a marginal armbar on 4 white. A very marginal armbar. I did not let the play start, develop, and finish. I got out of my basics. I got too comfortable. I didn't stay locked into my play calling. And, not only was the armbar White's best player's 3rd foul, the technical foul was his 4th foul.
Yeah.
So then, it's like you F up an F up with an F up. That's exactly what I've done here. So I call the foul. The player reacts. I cannot ignore the reaction. And then I hit him, and then I point. So bad. Had I let the play finish, we would have never had. You may want to take a guess on what happens next. Any guess? Huh?
Another technical?
Another technical. Wayne, you have the next clip?
Yep.
So stop right here. Stop right here real quick. At this point, when I'm walking to the table, here's what I'm saying to myself. Stay calm. Stay mature. You know what's coming. I know we're getting ready to get pushback from White's coach here in a second. It's just I don't know how it's going to play out. But remember at halftime, we had a game plan. We regrouped and we kind of talked to ourselves about how the second half could go. So we have a situation where White's coach comes out of the box, meets me at half court at the scores table, and Randy Heimerman, who's the crew chief, watching the whole thing, let it play out. I don't know if you can hear the audio. And at that point, he got ejected. And at that point, the game was a total root canal for the rest of the 15 minutes remaining. But And and I didn't show the clip after this, but when you have a situation where the coach is ejected, what have we talked about? Or when we have atypical situations, conflict resolutions, what's the very best thing that can happen next? Anyone? Get the ball back. Get the ball back in play.
Right.
Get the ball back in play. I mean, I walked the coach off the floor, and we did all of our administration things. But I just wanted to show that to the good, bad, and the ugly, and share that with you. And I'll open it up to any questions.
Did your partners know, obviously, I mean, I'm sure they could feel it, but did you guys have a conversation after that technical foul was given? And if so, what was it?
Which one?
After the ejection, like what was your conversation with your crew?
Yeah.
To get everyone kind of back on the same page.
Great point, Blanca. At the next media timeout, we all got together and we said, get back to the basics, stay fundamentally strong. But we can't, at this point, we've had 4 technical fouls and 3 of them had been on white. We can't miss anything on red. Nothing. 0 tolerance for the rest of the game. And fortunately, none of that never happened, but we got through it.
Jason?
Yeah. Yes, Al.
I think the self-criticism is excellent. But there's another thing that I see too is Alabama was up in the game, right?
Correct.
They have to show some. They have to show some poise and professionalism as well. And I think sometimes, just my opinion, as officials, we're human too. We beat ourselves up too much. I think what you're doing is excellent, but they also have to have accountability as well. And so on, because if he's playing at this level and to react like that, I'm gonna look at it as if I'm looking for players. Do I really want him on my team? And so on, because I watch a lot of games and I see this and I see this and I see this at all levels, and it's really not. I don't know what the words are. It's not. There's also for a player and a coach how to act as well. And I realize there's emotion, but if I'm up in a game by 11, I'm saying to myself, there's no way I'm going to get a technical fouls and get rejected to get them back in the game. So I think as officials, we have to look at that as well. Just my opinion.
No, and that comes, and you're exactly right. And I've talked to veterans. That kind of feel, I think, reps, experience, picking the brains of so many guys that have been through all that have seen how coaches work and their personalities and stuff. And I agree with that. A standard professionalism has to be maintained by both parties, no doubt about it. And I love what Jeff Clark said yesterday. As a coach, you are an administrator of the game. As a referee, I'm an administrator of the game. You're an administrator, I'm an administrator. Let's deal professionally here.
Right. The other thing is lending an ear or listening to coach too. And I think we get confused with this, or listening to a coach or work with a coach does not mean you're subservient to a coach. And I see a lot of officials in today's game are subservient to the coaches. And, another topic is commanding respect versus demanding respect. Do you command respect or you demand respect? So that's something to work on, because commanding respect is an art in itself. And so on, because they always talk about, I hear a lot of clinics is, working with the coaches in this and that, or communicating, but communication does not mean you're subservient to the coaches. there's a fine line thing too, because at the end of the day, in today's game, the officials are the guardians of the game. You know, regardless of who's wrong or who's right, but at the end of the day, we're responsible as guardians of the game. Just my opinion.
I agree. Thank you. Thank you.
An excellent point, Albert. And Jason, I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
Your position in lead, after we had made a decision, that after we called a foul on white number 4, is there something that you could have done internally to prepare yourself for any type of reaction that may have come? Because we had our own opinion about the decision we just made,
Mm-hmm.
and could we have anticipated, or could we have had a dialogue within ourselves to prepare us for the potential reaction that's coming?
Absolutely. And the reason another breakdown was there is the reaction surprised me. This is a good kid. He's a senior. I've had him all 4 years. The reaction surprised me, and that's what, equal and opposite reaction, collide like that, right? And so, when he reacted like that, had I had the self-talk of stay calm in all situations, maybe we could have had a little bit different result. However, back to the permit you promote type of deal, this was right in front of Alabama's bench, and this was a big outburst that he had 2 feet in front of me. Now, granted, it wasn't a quality foul, but that doesn't give him the right to do what he did.
Correct.
Wayne, back to what you were saying. What I should have done is said to myself, let the play start, develop, and finish. And back to my positioning at lead, I could have been a little bit wider, and I would have made a better decision. After I made that decision, I'm not sure in this situation if I could have passed on the technical foul, no matter what my self-talk had been.
Right.
Good. Do we have any other observations, comments, questions? I do have a quick note, real quick. Amy was scheduled to present next, but we're running a little deep into our time. So what we're going to do is we're going to reschedule Amy's presentation for next Wednesday, and we're going to roll right into it. So this will be part 2 next Wednesday. Do we have any questions or any observations on Jason's presentation?
Wayne?
Yes, sir.
Just a point, just for everybody, when calling technical fouls, always call them with dignity. Don't break your fingers. Call them with dignity, and that's part of Jason's piece on professionalism, because if you call them with dignity, it shows that you're poised and you're in control of your emotions.
I agree 100%. We have to remind ourselves that a technical foul is just like any other call on the floor. It's just a decision. It's just a call. All we're doing is correcting behavior. And it's hard because sometimes it hits us on a personal level, so then we react to it. And we have to constantly remind ourselves that it is not personal. It is just a call.
I think it goes back to what JB was saying, is it's just that professionalism part, and staying professional regardless of the situation. So I totally agree with that. That's good. JB, that was a really good presentation. We appreciate you doing that.
You're welcome, JB.
Good. And Al, thank you for your words of wisdom and sharing. We really appreciate that.
You're welcome.
All right. Do we have any? Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. I thought we had another question. Do we have any other questions or observations for Jason?
Real quick, Wayne, I just want to add, if those of you that have joined us here today are not part of the GroupMe group, just feel free to email Wayne or myself. I'll put my email on the chat. And then that way you can get the weekly links because we do this every week. So that way you can access it that way.
Excellent. All right, everybody. Hey, thank you all for once again for participating. Jason, thank you. Hey, Amy, thank you for your flexibility. I really appreciate that.
No worries. What else do I have to do? Sadly.
So yes, we will roll right into part 2 next Wednesday, same time, 2 o'clock. All right, everyone. Hey, fam. Everyone be safe. Everyone take care of each other. Look out for each other. Stay in touch. We see everybody next Wednesday at 2. Thank you very much.
See you guys.
Yes.
Thanks. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.